It turns out that bridge piers weren't built directly upward from the riverbed. Instead, builders first created a dry working area in the water. It sounds unbelievable, but the method was quite ingenious. They would drive a tight ring of wooden piles into the riverbed to form a temporary enclosure, a cofferdam. Then, all the water inside the enclosure would be pumped out, creating a dry, sealed space for construction. However, driving the piles firmly into place was not easy. They had to be hammered deep into the riverbed until they reached a solid rock layer. But even then, you can imagine the problem. Gaps between the wooden piles would allow water to seep in. To solve this, a second ring of piles was built outside the first. A pipe was inserted into the gap between the two layers, and mud or mortar was pumped in from the bottom upward. This prevented the material from dispersing in the water and allowed it to settle, dry, and harden effectively. Even after stopping the leaks, another issue remained. The surrounding water constantly pushed inward. Normally, the water inside would counterbalance this pressure, but since the interior had to be drained, the enclosure risked collapsing inward. So, wooden supports were installed to brace the structure. Then the silt inside was cleared out, and the foundation was filled with gravel and mortar. Once it hardened, it provided enough support to stabilize the enclosure, allowing the temporary supports to be removed. At this point, the bridge piers could be rapidly constructed. Stones were stacked and bonded with lime mortar, forming a strong, unified structure. Afterward, the temporary cofferdam was dismantled. When the tide rose, boats were used to transport stone beams into position between the piers. As the water level dropped, the beams would settle neatly into place. This method is known as the floating beam installation technique. On top of the beams, in addition to laying the bridge deck and railings, a covered corridor was built to protect pedestrians from wind and rain, thus creating a covered bridge. However, too many piers would obstruct boat traffic. So, in designing a second covered bridge, only 2 piers were constructed, with an arch spanning between them to bear the load. This allowed boats to pass freely while still supporting the heavy structure above. In the end, this resulted in a grand and magnificent covered bridge. Furthermore, pointed cutwaters were added to the upstream side of the piers to split the current and reduce impact. Drainage openings were also reserved in the bridge body to handle floodwaters. Finally, 2 guardian beasts were carefully carved to protect the bridge and calm the waters. Congratulations! You have invented the Anshun Covered Bridge. Located in Chengdu, Sichuan, it was rebuilt after being destroyed, but its origins can be traced back to the Yuan dynasty. It was also one of the 4 Chinese bridges that left the deepest impression on Marco Polo.